Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Fight for the Future live stream. Today I am joined by Utsav Gandhi from Fight for the Future and Benjamin Ismail from GreatFire. GreatFire is an anonymous research and advocacy organization based in China. They launched their first project in 2011 in an effort to help bring transparency to online censorship in China. Now, they focus on helping the Chinese people freely access information. Apart from being widely discussed in most major mass media outlets, GreatFire has also been subject of a number of academic papers from various research institutions. FreeWeibo.com won the 2013 Deutsche Welle Best of Online Activism Award and the Best Innovation category. In 2016, GreatFire won a Digital Activism Fellowship from the Index on Censorship. Utsav is a researcher and campaigner with Fight for the Future. Primarily, Utsav works on our efforts around protecting and preserving Section 230, but more broadly on our campaigns around content moderation and censorship. Utsav has a social media, communications, and public policy background, and is a recent master grad from the University of Chicago Harris School of Public Policy. Benjamin is a human rights advocate, independent activist, and founder of Watchdogs Unleashed, a non-governmental organization dedicated to freedom of information and expression. Benjamin also led the Asia Pacific desk on the international NGO Reporters Without Borders from 2011 to 2017. He was among the first human rights defenders to raise alarm bells on the situation of the Rohingyas, penetrated the red zone of Fukushima in 2012 while investigating the concealment of information by Japanese authorities regarding radiation, and participated in the launch of the Coalition for Safety of Journalists in Pakistan in 2013. Benjamin has been supporting GreatFire for over a decade and formally joined GreatFire in 2019 as the organization's Campaign and Advocacy Director. He took over applecensorship.com, revamping the website and turning it into a full-fledged advocacy platform. As always, if you enjoy this content, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications. And if you want to step outside the YouTube algorithm, you can also text live to 68788 and we'll text you when the stream starts. This live stream is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, our RSS feed, as well as many other podcast platforms. Today, I'm going to be sort of a secondary interviewer here. My colleague Utsav is going to be conducting the interview mainly. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Utsav, and you can take over from here.
Thanks, Joe. And it's good to be here. Hi, Benjamin. Good to be speaking with you as well. First of all, could you start us off by sharing a little bit more about GreatFire? What is the mission of the organization? What are its guiding principles? And can you give some examples of previous and current campaigns that the team has been working on?
Yeah, so GreatFire started about a decade ago, and it's based in China. And the primary focus of the organization was to bring transparency to online censorship in China. So it started with a website which allowed users to test the availability of any website in China. So you could test if the website was blocked or accessible from mainland China. And that project was very successful, and it led to many other projects. And today, GreatFire runs about 10 or so projects simultaneously, which all have a primary focus on China, but some of them are also found applications in other parts of the world, because other authoritarian regimes are also censoring content online, and therefore the solutions to circumvent censorship that GreatFire offered initially for Chinese users were also applicable for other countries. So
Got it, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. I think you were going to share more about the campaign, right?
Yeah, among the project, the initial project, you can find a project like Free Weibo that was mentioned. Free Weibo is a project which is about republishing the posts which are deleted, censored by the Chinese authorities on the Chinese equivalent of Twitter. And you have also a free browser, which is an app that you can use to browse censorship-free the web, and that is also helpful for other users, not only those in China. So there are, yeah, like this several projects which are very effective, and one of the latest projects of GreatFire is indeed applecensorship.com.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's we'll definitely dive into that a little bit. I did want to check with you or ask you, what is your personal background? Do you have more of a technical background, and is that your role on the team as well? Or are you more involved on, like your title suggests, on the advocacy side?
Yeah, I'm more of an activist, and although I've been working for RSF, Reporters Without Borders, many years, I didn't have initially a journalistic background. I studied Chinese language and civilization at the School of Oriental Languages in Paris, and international politics, and then I started at RSF in 2009. Yeah, and I remained on the issue of press freedom, freedom of information, and freedom of expression since. So that's my where I come from. So I met GreatFire while I was working at Reporters Without Borders, almost at the inception in 2011. We reported them via RSF financially and logistically. We've teamed for some advocacy work, and I became also closely involved supporting them, and that support remained even after I left the organization.
Got it. Yeah, so officially you joined GreatFire in a capacity in 2019, even though you've been involved in different ways for a decade, basically.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Great. All right. Thank you so much. So now let's get a little bit specific with your work around Apple censorship specifically in China. Can you walk back to when it originally began and share why did you feel this was an important issue for GreatFire to look at and to study? And what have you learned about the company's operations largely in China that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so GreatFire experienced firsthand censorship by Apple. And for that, we have to go back to 2013. At the time, the organization was developing some apps for Free Weibo to turn the Free Weibo service into apps. And they developed with a partner organization, they developed an iOS app, which they uploaded on the App Store and which was removed by Apple. So unilaterally, without any information, any possible discussion, the app was simply pulled out from the App Store. So since that time, the organization kept an eye on Apple's behavior and arbitrary management of its App Store, looking into its curation policies, and taking note of every cases that made the media and that was reported online. And it became more and more obvious that such project was needed, because cases were kept coming up, and so it became a project in 2019. That was the first iteration of the website, with its main feature, which we call the App Store Monitor, which is a tool which in a way is kind of similar as GreatFire's first project to monitor availability of websites in China. It runs on the same principle, if I can say so. It allows, so the App Store Monitor allows any user, any visitor of the website to test the availability of an app in any of the 155 app stores that Apple operates worldwide. And you get the results in real time almost. And we record those results, we keep them on the website, and that's how we build our database.
Okay, so that's a specific website which was existing even before this report came out. But do you have, stepping back for a second, do you have any like larger insights to share about Apple's operations in China more broadly, both on their hardware and like the app store side? Very like a high level perspective on what your big takeaways are from Apple and its existence in China.
Yeah, in a way, Apple has been forced from time to time to communicate on what it was doing. It was compelled to do so because there were some drastic changes in the Chinese legislation, and things on big scale were happening that they could not really hide. They could not just continue, operate, adapt, and say nothing about what was going on. They had to communicate. So they've taken the strategy of going forward and saying and communicating actively on what was happening, and they were trying to, I guess, mitigating the negative impact of those announcements. So they've been communicating on the removal of apps due to more restrictive legislations being installed in China. And what we found out with Apple censorship was that there was a discrepancy between what Apple was communicating and the reality, and the real figures were much higher than what Apple was telling the public and the press. In 2017, GreatFire managed to have 2 U.S. senators write a letter to Apple about the removal of what was called at the time the removal of few VPNs, of some VPNs in China. But Apple was compelled to answer to the senators, and it had to disclose that it had removed more than 600 VPNs in China. So that was the few VPNs that they had communicated about prior to that response. So yeah, the more we keep digging, the more we find instances of apps being inaccessible and available in app stores, and we also discover not only the sheer amount of apps that are not available, but also the way Apple operates. We discovered that they have not been straightforward with the developers, and some developers even discovered, thanks to Apple censorship.com, that the app were unavailable in China. There's this magazine, human rights oriented magazine, Bitter Winter, which focuses notably on religious freedom in China, who read a piece by The Intercept, and The Intercept at the time was covering this project, Apple censorship. And the editor-in-chief did discover that the app was unavailable in China, and he had never been informed by Apple about such an availability.
Sure. Just 2 follow-up questions. So you mentioned your own app was taken down, and that was the genesis of the project. Can you share what was communicated to you? Was it just like an email that Apple sent you? How did you find out when your app was taken down, and any reasoning that they provided?
Yeah, so I wasn't exactly there at the time, but yes, like many other removals, there was a simple information email
Mm-hmm.
apologizing and saying, that the app was not complying with the local legislation, which is the argument that Apple has used
Yeah.
in most cases to justify the removal.
Okay.
So they have
Got
a
it.
pretty standard email. Actually, if you take the exact wordings of this email and you use them to search online, you will find many developers discussing those messages and asking the community, other developers, what they can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Are others have experienced the same type of communication by Apple, and most of them are helpless, and they really don't know what to do. There's basically no way out. I mean, no solution for them to make their app available for the user.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Um, and also, I wanted to ask. You mentioned there were a couple of U.S. senators who basically got Apple to provide some more transparency. Do you remember who the senators were?
Yeah, it was Ted Cruz and another senator called Leary, I think.
Okay, maybe. Uh,
Yeah, they
yeah,
wrote they
Patrick
wrote
Leahy.
in around November 2017.
Okay, got it. All right. I was just curious because I have a public policy background. But yeah, so let's talk about this report itself now. You have this website, applecensorship.com. How did you decide to investigate this specific, the instances of LGBTQ apps on the App Store? Why were you inspired to look into this topic? Have you looked at other categories before through applecensorship.com? And do you know of any other research that has been conducted on this topic before you?
No, I'm not aware to answer the last part of the question. I'm not aware of any research that was specifically conducted on LGBTQ plus related apps on iOS platform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, LGBTQ plus related content has been studied by others in general, like websites being blocked in some countries with anti-LGBT legislations,
Mm-hmm.
such like that, but not really specifically on the App Store, on Apple's App Store. So we decided to I mean, we decided together with you, FFTF, to study that. I mean, first we have to recall a few things. There are about 1.8 million apps on the App Store, uh, and you have not about you have exactly 155 app stores. So
Mm-hmm.
if you multiply that by 1.8 million, you have a number of approximately 300 millions of potential cases of unavailability. So we cannot, there's no way we can scan the whole App Store ecosystem and all the apps in that ecosystem. We have to target our search. And we're looking for sensitive content. We're looking for um, human rights oriented content used by activists, journalists, political content. And we also apply a filter in terms of which app store we look at. We do look at all the app stores, but I mean now we have enough experience to see that the most relevant results will come from certain countries which are known to be authoritarian regimes. So in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia, we have countries which have shown more blocking of apps on iOS than other app stores. So it's a sad observation to make, but LGBT community and LGBT content is often regarded as sensitive content by many countries, and many countries still do criminalize the LGBT community. So we had run a few tests already, but we were pretty convinced that we were going to find relevant results, and we did. It still took us some time to find those results, to get those results. We conducted, I think, manually more than 20,000 tests, and so that's covering about around 200 apps. So then you can multiply that by the number of app stores, and we came up with a list of 61 apps which are unavailable in at least one or more app stores. And all those apps taken together, they amounted for 1,377 cases of availability. So that's kind of a confounding result, to say the least. When we found that, we were a bit shocked, surprised by some of the findings that we made, and then we took those numbers and we sorted them by countries, so we would get the repartition of how many apps were being blocked for each country, and we found that the countries that blocked the most amount of apps were countries which were criminalizing homosexuals and the LGBT community. So many African countries in the Middle East, but China came second in this top 20 most censoring countries, just behind Saudi Arabia, and then there was a number of African and Middle Eastern countries.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that high level, the results and the findings, etc. I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about the process and the methodology, specifically. So I want to know, if you can share, how did you identify what apps to look at, in the sense, how are you categorizing them or codifying them into different categories? What was difficult or challenging about the obstacles you faced in terms of access and transparency? You mentioned you conducted over 20,000 tests manually, but what information did you have available, and what was the general experience like doing this research?
Yeah, so to do all that, we mainly relied on our tool, on the App Store Monitor, which crawls. It's a crawler, yeah. It's crawling the app stores. So we get the information directly from Apple's website. So with that, we can also get the official categories for each app. There are around 20 categories, and so we've been focusing on social networking apps, lifestyle apps, and productivity and utilities apps. But we also found that entertainment and games apps were being blocked. So we included some of them in the study. In the end, I think there are among the 761 apps, we have 13 games apps which are available in many countries. So yeah, the work, it wasn't like difficult per se. It was tedious and very meticulous. We had to count, we had to list everything, we had to sort the number of the cases of unavailability by country ourselves. Yeah, I mean, it mainly took time and resources. I would say that the main difficulty we found was in the following step, which was, because you have to understand what the App Store monitor does is verifying the availability or unavailability of an app. And that's not censorship by definition. No algorithm can detect censorship. Only a human can do that. So because that's about the reason why it's unavailable. And for an app on the App Store, you have several reasons. Maybe the developer himself didn't want to release the app in a given App Store. Maybe the developers didn't have resources to localize the app in some local languages. So so you won't find the app in any country with Chinese language, using Chinese language or Arabic language. Yeah, you know, it simply doesn't exist. So you have to contact the developers. That's the only way to find out, because Apple is not communicating at all on that. There's total opacity. And there we faced our main obstacle. It's talking to developers. I mean, very few of them. We contacted all of the developers that we listed in our study, and very few of them accepted to talk to us. And the few that accepted to talk to us always, I mean, except in one case, they always asked to remain anonymous. Some of them were saying, we would talk to you, but only off the record. It really felt like talking to whistleblowers. Or people at risk operating in authoritarian regimes. But we were talking to you know, iOS developers, but that's how they feel about Apple. I mean, that says a lot about the relationship between Apple and those developers. Some developer even told us that they had chosen not to release the app in certain app stores. But when we asked if we could, you know, communicate on that, they asked us not to do that, not to even mention them at all. So there's a lot of self-censorship going on, and that's the most difficult thing. The CEO of Grindr recently tweeted that the app Grindr wasn't censored on the App Store, despite the fact that the app is not available in the Ukraine and in Saudi Arabia. And even some media, you know, which covered the report, made some kind of clarification, correction that despite what our study was saying, the app looked to be available, but it wasn't. So yeah, it's
sure.
in
So
some cases,
what do you?
It's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting. What do you make of it? Why? I mean, one reason is probably obvious, but why do you think developers feel compelled to remain anonymous, or you know, to project a different reality than what might actually be happening, or might not be wishing to come forth with all the information? What are your takeaways about the relationship between Apple and the developer community?
Hello. Yeah. Sorry, it cut a little bit. I think there's a financial element in that. I wouldn't be really qualified to comment on that, but it seems pretty obvious that for some companies, their position in the App Store is key, and they depend. And I mean, they have their revenues mainly from the app existence on the App Store. So they don't want to hurt their relationship with Apple. Talking about Apple's policies, behavior, and potential censorship publicly could harm at least there's a perception that this could be harmful for the presence of the app on the App Store. So yeah, by essence, there's an unbalanced relationship between developers and Apple, because the App Store is the only platform via which you can distribute your app to iOS users.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. We will talk a little bit more about that soon. I also wanted to ask what the other reasons for censorship could be. So, you found a strong correlation between the countries where the apps were unavailable and countries that already have sort of regressive and, anti-LGBTQ laws. So government censorship could definitely be another reason why these apps are not available. Could there be a third reason why Apple is proactively or preemptively taking down apps? And is there any transparency or information available about this from Apple itself?
Yeah, to answer that last part, officially there's a transparency report, but we found no consistency in the figures communicated by Apple. We've collected a number of figures, and yeah, honestly, they do not make sense. So they're far below the reality of what we observe. When you say government censorship, so that means that, I mean, for most of the apps unavailability that we observed, we're talking about censorship directed at the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other legislations, and some legislation Apple does not talk about. So there are a few LGBTQ plus related games apps that were removed from the China's App Store, and that might not have been targeted because they were offering LGBT related content, but because they were not following the local Chinese legislation. But it's very difficult to obtain for games. So foreign games apps must obtain a Chinese ID number, license number, in order to get on the App Store. So despite the fact that Apple says that if you comply and if you meet the requirements of our developers guidelines, you will be on the App Store. That's not true at all. You have to add all the specific requirements that every government is free to make. And on some of them, I mean, we've talked to developers who explained to us that they could not meet the requirement by the South Korean government. And specifically the Ministry of Gender Equality and they were asking for the app to raise the age rating of the app, but they couldn't do so. I mean, the platform, the dashboard as a developer was not allowing them to do so. So they could only select 17 years old or 19 years old, and the South Korean government was requiring them to go to 18 years old, 18 plus. So if they were to choose 19 years old, that was immediately deselect many countries in the Middle East. So the app would immediately become unavailable, and those developers would lose their community, and it was a gay social network and a gay and lesbian social network, and all those people would suddenly, they would not lose access to the app, because if they had downloaded it, it would still be there on their device, but they would not be able to update the app, and eventually, eventually they would be, they would lose, and they would lose access to the application if they were to uninstall it. They could not reinstall it if they were to change device, or lose their device, etc. It would be very difficult for them to continue to use it. So yeah, there's almost no information. So those developers have been asking Apple to help them in dealing with those additional governmental requirements, and the only answer that they received from Apple is that you have to deal with the government yourself. They were left alone. So even when we're not talking about targeted censorship, we're talking of a system, of an ecosystem which allows government to impose very abusive and restrictive measures on content creators and on the users for them to access such content. And there's no information provided by Apple, and we even found that Apple is trying to, in many cases, to hide those realities.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen a pattern of developers who are being censored within the App Store moving to like self-publishing their apps for Android as sideloadable apps, or moving them into the Google Play Store? Do you notice any difference in the amount of censorship between the two, or the utilization of sideloading on Android?
Yes, but it's hard to say. We do not, unfortunately, we do not have a Play Store monitor. We do not crawl the Play Store the same way, and we cannot measure the availability of apps. But talking about that study on LGBT apps specifically, we've been looking at the websites of many of these apps, and we were seeing that the apps had an Android version. So that's often the case when the developers release a service and an app. They often they do not choose between the two platforms. They try to be present on both. And actually, that also further exacerbates the silliness of this App Store system, because even when they remove the app, the iOS version of the app, the Android version remains accessible, and even if it were to be removed by Google from the Play Store, the developers could still propose the APK file, the package, the installation file on their own website, and users would still be able to connect to the website and download the app directly from the developer's website, something that they cannot do for the iOS version. So even if they, because some developers, that's the perfectly legitimate argument, said that they chose not to release the app in some countries out of safety of their users, but at the same time, they were releasing an Android version of the app. So if they really wanted to prevent users in that country to use their app, they should not provide an Android version at the same time. Especially since, in fact, in those countries, Android, the Android users community is much wider than the iOS community.
So, did you have any follow-up?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Benjamin, I wanted to know what Apple's response was to this report. The spokespeople, etc. What they have said publicly in the media, and any other instances of developers coming onto record and saying their version of the story, etc. Where are we right now? What has Apple said in response?
Yeah, they've communicated to they responded specifically to an article published by Protocol China, which focused, I mean, this article was covering the report, but not entirely. It was focusing on the 27 apps among the 61 that we covered that were unavailable in China. And at first, Apple communication department commented on those 27, saying that none of those, they were denying involvement in any of these 27 unavailabilities. And we successfully contacted some developers who were not aware at all that their apps was not available in China. And they even provided us with a screenshot of the dashboard where you can check, you have the list of all the countries and you can check or uncheck the countries in which you want to release your app. And for their app, China was still checked despite the fact that it wasn't there. So they were under the impression that their app was available in China, and they were shocked to learn, to discover via our report that it wasn't, and they thanked us for that. Sorry, what was the other part?
Yeah, I just wanted to know what your response would be to that. You know, like what would you tell the media or other folks right now?
So yeah, sorry, and after that there was few other media that carried the response from Apple spokesperson, and they added an even bigger denial, because they said that they were not involved in any of the 61 apps that we have studied in our research, and they were saying as well that both Scruff and Grindr were available worldwide. But we never even mentioned Scruff in our report. We never claimed that I mean, if you go to our website, you can see that Scruff is indeed available in all 155 countries. So we never we never asserted that it wasn't accessible and that it was blocked by Apple. And as for Grindr, it wasn't true. It's still unavailable in Saudi Arabia and in the Ukraine. So yeah, we initially planned on responding to Apple, but we now prefer to collect more information. We are more on the human intelligence aspect, to give context, to give more details to the numbers that we already got, and to have the direct testimonies from the developers. And so we're in the process of collecting this information, and we will I hope that we will together publish some kind of update on all that.
Thank you. Yeah. So then taking a step back, or like over, more going away from this back and forth with Apple, what do you think are your big demands? Do you have from Apple as it comes to this censorship? What does all of this mean about their app store and the monopolistic business practice, the side loading and the direct downloads that Joe mentioned earlier? What is the bigger picture here that people should understand, that you want people to take away from this project as a whole, Apple censorship?
Yeah. First, I think that this report specifically helps to understand the nature of the App Store and the counterintuitive nature of the App Store. When you create and when you release a new website, you don't ask yourself where this website is going to be accessible. You just create your website, and you assume it's going to be accessible worldwide. So when Apple brags about having 155 app stores and later to be available to have its services present in 175 countries. I think that's quite laughable. You know, anyone starting a website is available in you know in all countries worldwide. So it's kind of the incarnation of a geolocalized internet, and that's counter to the initial philosophy of the internet, and it it tells about. I mean, you quickly understand the notion of the control. You measure the control that Apple has on content, and not only on those who provide and who distribute content, but also on those who try to access it. And that's an issue in itself. So as a solution, yeah, side loading, what we call side loading, the ability to download an app from another place than the App Store, namely the website of the developer of the app, for instance, via a browser. A very good solution that he's proposed and pushed by many academics, economists, journalists, and users. Apple's response to that, waiving the argument of security is a bit abusive. They if you listen to them, the side loading would really completely kill the iOS environment, and that's not true. And when the point was raised during the trial between Epic Games Company and Apple, that the Mac, the Apple's computers environment was allowing third-party apps and was like kind of allowing side loading. And they preferred to shoot themselves in the foot and saying, "Oh yeah, but that's a mistake. Let's not replicate." So that's quite worrying, because we could have hoped that Apple would maybe replicate the model, the ecosystem it has on its Mac, and put it on its iOS device. But I think we have to fear that the other way is going to happen. That what we have currently on iOS, on iPhones and iPads, becomes the future reality for Mac computers. Even, I mean, if that's not an option for Apple, the very least that they could do is be completely sincere and transparent about what they do. I'm not absolutely convinced that we are ideologically very far from Apple. So there's a number of cases of censorship and content restriction that do not originate from Apple's ideology. They're operating in a number of countries which are led by authoritarian regimes, and they are doing what they can, and in some cases they are resisting pressure, but they're really also practicing double standard. They feel very comfortable and maybe able to dismiss or to ignore some of the requests by some governments, while they're really zealous, and they really try to even, yeah, as you said before, preempt government requests by enforcing strict content policies themselves in other countries. So they have to stop that double standard. They have to come clean and to really explain. That would actually, I mean, it would be a benefit for everyone, including Apple. I think they're afraid that they're gonna lose some access to some markets if they do that. But if they were to do that worldwide, there's nothing that governments could do about it, including China. Right now, the way, I mean, we observe how Apple is operating in the world, and specifically in China, and that's very, very worrying, because we know that half of the Hong Kong population is using iOS device. So if tomorrow the Chinese authorities ask Apple to start implement the same restrictions that are in vigor in mainland China, in Hong Kong, so just in a snap of a finger, the reality of digital freedom and online censorship in Hong Kong could radically change in a day. So yeah, that's what I have to say about Apple.
Yeah, thank you. That was all very, very helpful. I think there are like some strong takeaways there, and you like even earlier last week, Apple released like a report or some sort of a document that said we cannot allow for side loading or direct downloads of apps because of children's safety and privacy. But even Fight for the Future has done investigations in the past, and we have a website, abolishtheappstore.org, which has revealed lots of fake websites and scams and fake applications on the App Store as well. So it's just there are just so many apps on the App Store. It's not even humanly possible to sift through all of them and find. So we don't entirely buy that argument as well. So thank you so much for sharing. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say just that they make it look like privacy and app censorship are two distinct topics, but they are closely related, intertwined. If you block access to an app for a person who's using an app and suddenly doesn't have access to that app, then he stops having access to updates, and that person's obsolete version of the app becomes a vulnerability, and therefore private data and information can be vulnerable, can be compromised. So yeah, their content creation policies are closely linked to privacy issues and to the safety of the users that they so often put forward to justify their actions.
Sure. Great, thank you. Yeah, and then my last question was next lead to.
Sorry, it could.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I was wondering where you see this research going next, and I think you briefly touched on that we can continue to investigate, further instances of app removal and engage with Apple in that sense, I guess.
Yeah, we will be talking to more developers, and we'll get. I mean, every conversation we have with every developer brings new information. They don't visualize even the same things on their account. They don't have the same experience. They don't have the same communications from Apple. They don't face issues in the same country. So we also discover new local legislations that we didn't know about. So it's taking all kinds of their directions, including the legal direction. The technical one,
and policy and advocacy one as well.
Yeah. And we'll increase also the scope of our monitoring, and so it's both quantitative and qualitative update that we're going to make.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thanks so much, Joe. Unless you have any other questions, that was it on my end. Benjamin, if there's anything else you wish to share, please feel free, but otherwise I'll pass it on to Joe.
Yeah, so one question that I do have for the viewers listening and watching. So if people want to educate themselves on this study and see what you're up to, where can they find that content? And also for developers who may suspect that they're being censored or know that they're being censored, how can they reach your organization and work with you on that subject?
Yeah, so we can be contacted directly on our website, and all of the content that we publish is available on our website, which is applecensorship.com, all attached. And yeah, there's a contact form there. We provide a PGP key for those who need encryption and who want to increase security. They will find the press release. We have a blog page which leads to the full results. It's an open Google sheet, and you have pretty much everything there. We have a campaign kit which allows you to download some visuals and our logos and some graphics to expose and protest against censorship of apps by Apple. We are hosting the petition launched by Fight for the Future, which I hear is already having very good results. But we invite everyone to find that petition everywhere they can, including on our website. So yeah.
And for those watching on YouTube, when this video is archived, I'll be sure to include all of the mentioned links in the description. Utsav, thank you very much for guest hosting. You did a great job. I love when people other than me host. It's really interesting to watch. And Benjamin, thank you very much for making the time to meet with us. I know that it is late in your local time, so I really appreciate
my pleasure. Thank you.
You joining. If you like this content, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications so that you can be alerted when we go live in the future. You can also text live to 68788 and we will text you when the stream starts. This content is also available on Spotify and ironically in this episode specifically also available on Apple Podcasts. So you can check us out there. We have an RSS feed if you'd like to plug it into your app of choice. And we're also available on many other podcast apps. Thanks for everybody joining. Thank you to the people watching. And Utsav, Benjamin, thank you very much. I think that's all we've got for this week, but we will be back next week. Our regular time is 1 o'clock Eastern on Fridays. And check our social media for updates on that, because like today, sometimes that changes. We're not always at that time, but we'll see everybody next week. And thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're off there on YouTube. Thank you very much, Benjamin.